RV News based on the title Dinar and Dong Decision Day. IMF CBI June 20th announcement could change everything. RV News Iraqi Dinar written in paragraph format without headings. Welcome back to RV News, your trusted source for the latest updates, insights, and breaking developments in the world of global currency revaluation, especially the Iraqi Dinar and the Vietnamese Dong. If you've been following this journey for any amount of time, then you know just how intense and eventful these past few weeks have been. But what's coming up on June 20th might just be one of the biggest turning points we've ever seen. The International Monetary Fund, in conjunction with the Central Bank of Iraq, is preparing to make an official statement and announcement that many insiders believe could finally set the stage for a long-anticipated shift in the global financial landscape. Could this be the long-awaited Dinar and Dong Decision Day? In today's video, we'll explore the events leading up to this monumental date, what sources are saying behind the scenes, and how it could impact you directly. So buckle up, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell, because you won't want to miss what's coming next. Over the past several months, we've seen increasing alignment between several global economic institutions, sovereign central banks, and private banking systems, from renewed discussions at the IMF's spring meetings to abrupt policy shifts by the CBI and the Vietnamese Central Bank. The financial world is clearly preparing for something major. The Iraqi Dinar IQD and Vietnamese Dong VND have remained undervalued for decades, artificially held down due to historical conflict, sanctions, and market manipulation. But now, in 2025, the conversation has dramatically changed. Iraq has stabilized its internal infrastructure and regained significant control over its oil exports. Meanwhile, Vietnam's robust manufacturing growth and tightening financial regulations have placed it in strong economic standing. For months, analysts have been saying that the stage is set for a currency realignment, and now that speculation may be reaching a head with the upcoming IMF-CBI joint announcement. According to multiple credible sources within the banking and economic reform community, June 20th has been quietly circled as a pivotal date. It is believed that the International Monetary Fund, under strong pressure from key G20 member nations, will be coordinating with the Central Bank of Iraq to release a policy statement. While the official content of this announcement is still under wraps, some insiders claim it pertains directly to Iraq's monetary sovereignty, exchange rate reforms, and possibly an acknowledgement of a pending rate adjustment. The very language being used by these sources is unlike anything we've heard in the past 10 years. Terms such as transitional liquidity realignment, rate equalization mechanics, and sovereign parity protocols are being quietly circulated behind closed doors. What makes June 20th even more significant is the strategic timing. Just 2 days prior, on June 18th, high-level meetings were conducted between senior officials from the World Bank, U.S. Treasury Department, and key Gulf states in Amman, Jordan. These meetings were focused primarily on regional economic stability and multilateral agreements involving Iraq, Kuwait, and Saudi Arabia. In addition, documents leaked from European financial desks suggest that currency basket models are being recalibrated to include a new adjusted rate for the Iraqi dinar, potentially valuing it somewhere between $1.32 and $3 per IQD, depending on oil peg indexes and hydrocarbon contract recalculations. The Vietnamese Dong, often seen as a counterpart in the speculative revaluation community, is not being left out either. Vietnamese monetary policy has become increasingly transparent in the last 18 months, with structural reforms introduced to reduce inflation, stabilize banking practices, and invite foreign direct investment. Several Asia-Pacific central banks have indicated that Vietnam is preparing for a tiered rate transition, likely moving away from its tightly controlled peg and possibly adopting a more market-driven floating or managed float regime. The IMF has consistently praised Vietnam's economic discipline and foreign reserve buildup, further reinforcing the idea that the Dong is poised for a significant appreciation. With both the Dinar and Dong under global financial scrutiny and revaluation consideration, June 20th becomes not just a day of announcement but potentially the launchpad for an entirely new global rate system, one that moves away from the legacy of post-war currency suppression and into a new era of valuation. But what exactly will this announcement entail? Based on briefing memos shared by individuals working in currency negotiation circles, the upcoming IMF-CBI statement could include language around Iraq's movement into the second phase of its White Paper Economic Reform Plan, which explicitly outlines mechanisms for revaluing the dinar as part of broader economic stabilization. There's also talk of Iraq leveraging digital currency infrastructure for sovereign transparency, possibly backed by oil revenue accounting through blockchain verification. In parallel, the US and UK financial regulators are reportedly coordinating with SWIFT and ISO 20022 implementation teams to ensure that any rapid currency adjustment is synchronized with secure international transfers. There's even speculation that certain redemption centers once thought to be a myth are now entering a standby phase, Several anecdotal reports suggest private bankers have been placed under new non-disclosure agreements and are preparing for high-net-worth exchange protocols to be enacted in the days following the announcement. What makes this even more compelling is that recent changes to Basel III and Basel IV compliance frameworks have started to affect how banks manage currency, holdings, and liquidity buffers. Some banking analysts believe this is intentional, meant to allow central banks and private financial institutions to absorb the shock of large-scale currency revaluation without triggering capital flight or liquidity crises. In fact, within the past 2 weeks, HSBC, JP Morgan Chase, and UBS have issued internal memos alerting their foreign currency desks to monitor Middle Eastern and Southeast Asian currency behaviors more closely than usual. The timing isn't coincidental. It's becoming increasingly clear that something is about to shift, and June 20th could be the moment it all goes public. From a geopolitical perspective, both Iraq and Vietnam are currently enjoying elevated diplomatic relations with major global players. Iraq has entered new security and oil agreements with the European Union, while Vietnam continues to expand trade deals with the US, South Korea, and Japan. These alliances are crucial, as they provide the macroeconomic backing necessary for a successful revaluation without destabilizing the domestic economy. In short, both countries now have the political and economic foundation to support an upward currency adjustment, and the international community appears ready to support it. But let's address the elephant in the room. Will the IMF CBI announcement explicitly reveal a new exchange rate for the Iraqi Dinar or Vietnamese Dong on June 20th? According to legal analysts familiar with IMF protocol, it's unlikely that a specific rate will be disclosed publicly during the announcement itself. Instead, they anticipate a more subtle release, likely framed around restructuring agreements or rate realignment frameworks. However, history has shown that such statements often act as precursors to tangible action within 24 to 72 hours. In fact, in 2005, when Iraq underwent a temporary rate reset, the IMF used nearly identical language just days before the new rate appeared on forex terminals globally. This means that while June 20th may not immediately produce a live rate change, it could set the entire domino chain into motion, initiating a very narrow window in which financial institutions begin quietly recognizing new rates internally before public distribution. This is why so many within the RV community are calling this decision day, not because it's the day everything ends, but because it may be the day everything finally begins. As always, with potential comes caution. It's vital for viewers to understand that this is a highly fluid situation, and while optimism is high, there are still risks. Political delays, unexpected banking resistance, or even deliberate stalling tactics could still interfere. However, the overall trajectory, it is unmistakable. Iraq is on a clear path toward economic sovereignty, and Vietnam is emerging as a financial powerhouse in Asia. These are not the signs of stagnant currencies. These are the indicators of change. So what should you do as we approach June 20th? First and foremost, stay informed. This is not the time to rely on rumors or social media hype. Look for official IMF press releases, CBI policy papers, and legitimate banking updates. Make sure you're subscribed to RV News, as we'll be covering the announcement in real time and breaking it down the moment it happens. Second, prepare your documentation. If and when the revaluation occurs, banks and redemption centers will require verified identity, legal proof of currency holdings, and possibly tax documentation depending on your jurisdiction. Be ready. Don't wait until the last minute. Additionally, consider speaking with a licensed financial advisor or wealth management consultant who is familiar with foreign currency holdings. There are important legal and tax implications that can arise from a sudden increase in net worth, and being proactive could save you significant stress later.